In this video, I'm going to show you some of the rares you might want to pick up as they just rotated out of standard and could be at their all-time lowest prices. Once a year, standard format has 4 sets rotate, meaning standard players can no longer legally play those cards. Therefore, a lot of times they're looking to empty their trade binders, sell off part of their collection, as they no longer have a use for those cards, meaning Commander players have a chance to pick up those cards at a great bargain. I'm going to show you here some of the rares that are rotating out of standard and you can pick up at a discount right now. This video is in no way a financial guide. I am not trying to say you should pick these up and their prices are going to increase over time and you'll be able to resell those cards and turn a profit. This is just a good chance for budget Commander players to pick up some cards that already see play and will likely see an increase in their price over time. To start off, we're going to talk about the white cards. We got Brought Back, which makes for a great protection as it allows you to reanimate 2 cards that left the battlefield in a single turn back to the battlefield. Ignite the Beacon, great for Super Friends decks, which allows you to tutor up 2 planeswalkers from your library to your hand. And Sephara Sky's Blade, which is great for a Flyers Matters deck as it gives all of your flyers indestructible. You can pay a single white and tap 4 flyers to put it onto the battlefield, so it has a potential reduced cost. It's also a 7/7 flying lifelinker. Planner Cleansing, which makes for a great reset button as it destroys all non-land permanents. Tithe Taker, another hate bear, which forces your opponents to pay extra if they want to activate abilities or play spells on your turn. And Tomic, Distinguished Advocist, which makes for a great hate card on any of those Lands Matters deck, as it blocks your opponents from targeting lands in graveyards or on the battlefield, and also doesn't allow your opponents to play lands from their graveyard. Moving on to blue, we have Flood of Tears, which bounces all non-land permanents to their owner's hand, and allows you to put a CMC 4 or less from your hand onto the battlefield. Quasi-Duplicate, which is a clone card, and also has Jumpstart, so you can cast it from your graveyard. And then Tail's End, which allows you to counter an activated or triggered ability, as well as a legendary spell. Dread Presence, great in mono black decks, as it allows you to draw cards or deal 2 damage to a target if you play a swamp. Can really help you get some card advantage or control the board of your opponent's planeswalkers or utility creatures. Midnight Reaper gets you card draw anytime one of your non-token creatures dies. And then Mausoleum Secrets, which is great for self-mill decks, as it allows you to tutor up something from your library with a CMC equal to or less than the number of creatures in your own graveyard. Font of Agonies is great for those decks that pay life to get stuff done, as it also helps you control the board of creatures in relation to the amount of life you're paying. And then Massacre Girl, another board wipe, which gives all creatures -1/-1 each time a creature dies. So depending on the board situation, can help you wipe the board entirely and leave you with a 4/4 with Menace. And then 2 cards are great for Aristocrats type strategies. Dreadhorde Invasion, which gives you a token at the beginning of your upkeep each turn, makes for great sacrifice fodder, and a sacrifice outlet in Priest of the Forgotten Gods, as she can allow you to sacrifice 2 of your own creatures, force each of your opponents to sack a creature. They're going to lose some life, you're going to draw a card, and also get 2 black mana. Moving on to red cards. Runaway Steamkin makes for some good mana ramp, as whenever you cast a red spell, it gets a plus counter, and then you can remove 3+ counters to add 3 mana to your mana pool. Fire Artisan gets you card advantage, as it allows you to exile cards off the top of your library, and you can cast those cards for the remainder of that turn. She also allows you to redirect any damage dealt to her to another opponent or planeswalker, and if you ever get to 7, can really help propel you and put you over the top, as you can -7 her to get access to the top 7 cards of your library. Experimental Frenzy also gives you access to the top cards of your library at the cost of shutting off your hand. Great play for once you've played out your entire hand, then you can put out Experimental Frenzy, use a few turns to restock your hand and just play off the top of your library. And then you can destroy the Frenzy yourself to once again play the cards in your hand. Drakuseth Maw of Flames is just a big 7/7 flyer that allows you to destroy some small to mid-sized creatures whenever he attacks. Neheb Dreadhorde Champion kind of does it all. It's a 5/4 trampler for 4 mana that allows you to cycle the cards in your hand when it deals damage to a player or planeswalker, and then you also get mana equal to the number of cards you cycled to use during your second main phase. And then of course, Shivan Dragon, just a classic card, 5/5 flyer with fire breathing for 6 mana. Nothing special here, but it is a rare that I do see come up in my play group sometimes. Fun card to see as it's been around forever. Krenko 10 Street Kingpin is great for goblins and token type strategies, as anytime you attack with him he gets a plus counter, and then you also get to put 1/1 goblins on the battlefield equal to Krenko's power. So the first time he's going to get a plus counter and attack, you get 2 goblins. The next turn he gets another plus counter, you got 3 goblins, and if your opponents don't have a way to deal with it, you kind of snowball out of control. Mirror Match is fun if you're playing a coin flipping deck, as it gives you just extra opportunity to flip some coins. And the Glinthorn Buccaneer makes for a good card in any burn type or wheel type strategies, as it helps you deal damage to your opponents anytime you discard a card, and can also trigger himself, as when he attacks you can pay 2, discard a card to draw a card, helping you get that deal damage trigger. It's also a 2/4 for 3 mana with haste, so pretty good stats as well. Sarkhan the Masterless makes for a great card in any Dragons or Super Friends decks, as it can weaponize your planeswalkers, turning them into 4/4 flyers, and you can swing in for a good bit of damage with them. Or if you're playing a Dragons type deck, anytime a creature attacks you or one of your planeswalkers, it's going to take a single damage from each of your dragons, so it can really make it hard for your opponents to swing into you. And then also Sarkhan can just pay 3 loyalty to create you a 4/4 dragon as well. Repeated Reverberation is also good in Super Friends decks as well as Spellslinger decks, as you can copy a loyalty ability, sorcery, or instant up to 2 times whenever you cast Repeated Reverberation. On to our green cards, we have Endbraze Forerunners. The budget version of Craterhoof Behemoth does cost 8 mana, but it pumps up your entire team +2/+2, giving them Vigilance as well as Trample. It's a 7/7, and it has Vigilance, Trample, and Haste itself, so it can really help you finish off opponents. Plane-wide Celebration is good in those counters or proliferate type decks, as you can choose 4. There are 4 different modes, but mostly I see players use this to proliferate. However, you can gain 4 life, return a permanent from your graveyard to your hand, or create a 2/2 citizen creature token. Night Pack Ambusher is good in werewolf or wolf tribal decks, as it gives an anthem to all those creatures. And if you didn't cast any spells during your own turn, at the beginning of your end step you get a 2/2 wolf. Onto our multicolored cards, we have Time Wipe, which helps us to destroy all creatures, bouncing one of our own creatures to our hand. Deafening Clarion, which makes for great removal on our opponent's utility creatures, or if our opponents are playing any tokens type strategies. Also gives our entire team lifelink. And then Solar Blaze, which forces each creature to deal damage to itself equal to its power. Response allows us to deal 5 damage to an attacking or blocking creature, and Resurgence gets us extra combats, giving all of our creatures First Strike and Vigilance. And then Temple of Triumph gives us a scry as well as red and white mana. Ethereal Absolution is twofold in that it gives all of our creatures +1/+1, as well as all of our opponent's creatures -1/-1, and gives us a little graveyard hate, as we can dump mana into it to exile cards from our opponent's graveyards and potentially get 1/1 spirits if those cards were creatures. Revival allows us to reanimate a CMC 3 or less creature from our graveyard to the battlefield, and then Revenge is great for any life drain, life gain type strategies, as it allows us to double our own life while having an opponent's. Mnemonic Betrayal gives us access to the cards in all of our opponent's graveyards, while Theater of Horrors gets us card advantage, as we can exile a card off the top of our library at the beginning of each upkeep. We get access to the cards exiled with the Theater of Horrors if we can deal damage to an opponent, and the Theater gives us a way to do that, as we can dump mana into it to deal damage to an opponent or planeswalker. Rick's Mighty Reveler gives us card selection, as we can discard a card to draw a card when it enters the battlefield, and then if we pay the Spectacle cost, can actually generate us card advantage, as we can discard our hand to draw 3 cards. If you empty your hand out and then play this, you're discarding 0 cards to draw 3 cards, so it makes for a good way to restock your hand. Firemind's Research is meant for those Spellslinger decks, as you get a charge counter whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, and then you can remove charge counters to either draw cards or deal 5 damage to any target. Simic Ascendancy makes for a good card in any plus counters decks, as you can pay 3 mana to put a plus counter on any of your own creatures, and then anytime one of your creatures gets a plus counter, the Ascendancy gets a growth counter, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you ever have 20 or more growth counters, you win the game. And then of course another Temple, which gives us a Scry as well as black and green mana. Toll Your Friend to Wolves is a fun card, as it's a 3/3 that can get you another 3/3 and allows you to force that 3/3 to fight something and gain you some life. So it can really help you remove your opponent's utility creatures and help get some bodies onto the battlefield for you. Camaraderie is going to gain you some life, draw you some cards, as well as pump your entire team. And then lastly, we have some cards that are not multicolored. However, the first two you're not really going to play unless you're in a multicolored deck, as the Tome of the Guildpact is a 5 to cast mana rock, but anytime you cast a multicolored spell, you get to draw a card. Guildmage's Forum allows us to color fix as well as get plus counters onto our multicolored creatures. And then Bag of Holding is a colorless card. Fairly decent, as it only costs 1 mana and can generate you some card advantage, but it really excels in wheel type decks, as whenever you discard a card, you get to exile that card, and then Bag of Holding allows you to draw cards to discard them, essentially exiling them under the Bag of Holding. And then you can pay a 4 mana, sacrifice the Bag of Holding, and you get all the cards that Bag of Holding exiled. So it can really help propel you into that mid to late game and hopefully take over the table. If I didn't say this before, down below you can find a link to a full list, including commons and uncommons, although it's less likely that their price is going to increase too much, as there's just more copies of them in the market. Leave a comment down below letting others know which cards I might have missed, if there were any other rares you think are budget that see play in Commander. These are just the ones that, as I comb through the set lists, I noticed, I see these cards and how people typically play them. Hopefully you were able to find a gem or two in this video, and thanks for watching. If you liked the video, you should give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. If you do, make sure you ring the bell so you don't miss any of the new weekly content from Budget Commander. Otherwise, you can check out the video in the top right or either of the playlists on the bottom.